Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to overclock a GPU, so stay tuned till the end. Alright guys, so the graphic card that we are going to overclock today is the NVIDIA RTX 2080 Ti Founders Edition card. Now this card in itself is extremely powerful. I don't think there's any other card which can compete with this card in the market as of right now. But after overclocking, we are going to make it even more powerful. I've installed this graphic card inside Project Hope build, which we also did on this channel. So in case if you have not seen that video, I'm going to put a link at the end of this video so that you guys can go and see that as well. Now before you start overclocking, the main thing that you should understand here is that no matter if you have an NVIDIA card or you have an AMD card, the process of overclocking both these cards is exactly the same. The parameters that you change is exactly the same. However, after overclocking, the way these cards would behave would be completely different, and that's because the architecture of these cards are completely different. So in case of the AMD card, once you input a certain value for it to overclock to, the AMD card would try and reach that frequency while it's boosting. However, in case of NVIDIA card, that frequency which you have manually entered inside the software for it to overclock to, your NVIDIA card would directly boost to that frequency. So this is something that you should keep in your mind. If your AMD card doesn't boost to that frequency, it doesn't mean that your card is faulty, but that's the way how these cards overclock. Now before you overclock, try and make sure that you have the latest driver updates installed onto your system. Please also make sure that your operating system is also updated. Besides this, you'll have to download a software called MSI Afterburner. You can also use EVGA Precision X1. The next thing you would want to do is you would want to kind of download some kind of a benchmark software to test your graphics performance. For us, we have downloaded the 3D Mark TimeSpy, which is a paid software, and we downloaded from the Steam library. So in case you have a Steam subscription, you can go and download it from there as well. If you don't want to download 3D Mark TimeSpy, you can also go and download Furmark to test the stability or stress your GPU to see if it's stable or not after you overclock your graphic card. Besides this, you can also download Unigine Heaven or Unigine Valley, which are also freeware that you can find on Google and download it. So guys, these are the few things that you should keep in your mind. And now let's just start overclocking our GPU. Alright guys, so now that we are inside our operating system, in my case this is Windows 10. The first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up MSI Afterburner and quickly check my stock settings. So here I can see that my memory is clocked at 7000 megahertz and my core is at 1350 megahertz. Now these are the two values which you would change when you are overclocking, including the power limit, which is at 100%. So just before we start overclocking, let's just quickly get a baseline score as to how our system is performing. So you would want to come into 3D Mark, and then I would select TimeSpy here and I would go to details and just run the graphics test. I don't want my CPU test to run at this point. I just want to see how my graphics are performing. So I'm just going to quickly run this test here and come back to you after I get a score. Alright guys, so we have finished our test and let's just quickly have a look at our scores. It's 13,851. So now what we are going to do is we are actually going to start overclocking our GPU. So the first thing I'm going to do is, without touching any other parameter, I'm just going to increase my power limit. So as I increase my power limit, my temperature limit also went up from 84 to 88. So that's absolutely normal, because when you give more power to your GPU, more heat or more temperature is bound to be there. The temperature is bound to increase. So let's just quickly save this and run this test one more time to see how much difference has it made by just increasing the power limit. So let's just quickly run this test, and we are going to do exactly the same thing. We are not going to run the CPU test, we just want to run the graphics test. So let's just quickly run this. Alright guys, so now that we have finished the test, as you can see, we have a graphics score of 14,396. That's about 500 points more than what we had before increasing our power limit slider. So now what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to go to MSI Afterburner again, and I'm going to increase my core clock. So I'm going to input a value that I want to add to my boost clock here. So say I want to add 160 megahertz. So once I do this, when my test is running again, it would add 160 megahertz to my boost clock. So when you are overclocking, when you try and overclock your GPU, it might not reach 160, it might just reach 120. So always start off from a lower value, like say 50, 60, 100, and then gradually come up. Overclocking needs a little bit of patience, but once you get your values perfect, once you get everything perfect, you're going to see huge performance benefits. So after we have entered 160 here, let's just quickly go and test our system once again and see what scores do we get. So again, we are just going to run the graphics test. We are not going to run the CPU test. So let's just quickly run this and come back again. So guys, now as you can see, we have a score of 15,087. In case your system had crashed while running the benchmark test again, after increasing the core clock, you would want to go back to MSI Afterburner and then decrease the frequency by maybe 10 or 20 megahertz and see if your system was running. If it didn't, then you would probably want to go back by 50 megahertz and see. As I had said, that while you are increasing the value for the core clock, you would not want to overclock, or you would not want to input the value with a huge number. Try by going 50 megahertz at a time. So now that we have 15,087 here, what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to increase my memory clock. So I'm going to input 600 here. 600 should be pretty okay for this card, RTX 2080 Ti, to be overclocked. So yep, I think it shouldn't be a problem. Let's just quickly run this test and see how things go. So let's just quickly see. Okay, we just want to run the graphics test, CPU test we don't want to run now. So let's just quickly run the test. Alright guys, so now as you can see, we have already finished our test and we have a graphics score of 15,351. So that's about 1,500 points more than from where we started. We started at 13,851 and now we are at 15,351. So that just shows that we have gained a decent performance benefits by just overclocking our system. Now what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to test a few games and show you the benchmarks of these games at the end of this video, guys. So stay tuned and I hope you have enjoyed this overclocking tutorial. So F1 2019, this game we were running at 1440p at ultra high settings, and before our overclock we were getting about 136 fps on the minimum side with an average of 158 frames per second and a maximum of 165. However, after our overclock we found out that we had about 20 frames increase on the minimum side, taking it to 156, and on an average we were getting about 185, and on the max side we touched about 225 frames per second. For the Shadow of Tomb Raider, again we chose the 1440p resolution with ultra high settings, and I'm not sure if DLSS was switched on while we were benchmarking this game. However, on the minimum side we had 49 frames per second, average to about 70 frames per second, and max we were touching at about 134. This was before overclocking, and after overclock our minimum FPS was about 54. Our average we were hovering at around 78 frames per second, and on a maximum side we touched 148 frames per second. With respect to GTA 5, before overclocking we had a minimum FPS of 167, averaged at around 202 frames per second, and maxed out at 264 frames per second. However, after overclock we touched 190 frames per second on the minimum side, and average was about 242 with a max FPS of about 285. For Far Cry 5, minimum frames per second that we got during our benchmarks was 96. We averaged at around 119, and the max FPS was 152. This was before overclocking, and after overclocking we touched about 105 on the minimum side, averaged at around 130 frames per second, and the max frames per second was about 170. So all these tests were conducted at 1440p at ultra high settings. Alright guys, this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed our video on GPU overclocking. If you like this video, press that like button. If you have not already subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. Share this content with your friends. And down in the comment section below, please do tell us what do you think about this video and what else would you like to see in near future. So guys, this is it. Until next time, it's Sajeev signing off. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. Bye bye.